Let's start with a really big question, one that sits at the heart of so many religions. What happens when God just stops talking? For any faith that's built on the idea of divine revelation, this is a huge crisis. Today, we're going to trace the incredible five-stage journey of how authority travels from a living, divine voice to a silent, ancient text, and finally into the hands of human beings.
Yeah, this is the core of it all. I mean, just think about it. If your entire community, your morality, your identity is based on hearing from a divine source, and then one day, there's just silence, what do you do? How do you hold everything together? The answer, as we'll see, lies in a fundamental and fascinating transformation. So, this slide really gets to the heart of that transformation. On the left, you have revelation. It's an active encounter, it's divine speech that you just receive. On the right, you have what it becomes, interpretation. The divine text is now a memory of that encounter, and it's something that has to be managed. The whole experience of faith changes. So here's our roadmap. We're going to walk through this migration in 5 distinct stages, from the moment a spoken word gets written down, all the way to the creation of complex doctrines. And then, we'll look at the incredible illusion that makes this whole historic shift almost impossible to see. All right, let's kick things off with stage 1, from voice to text. This is the first, and you could argue the most important step. As soon as that divine communication stops, the community kind of panics, right? They scramble to preserve everything they heard, turning that living, breathing word into a fixed, static text. And right away, there's a major trade-off. You lose that dynamic, immediate, personal event of revelation. But in its place, you get a preserved record. And that record is something you can build a community around for generations. But solving one problem creates a brand new one, and it's a doozy. And here it is. This is the problem that drives this entire process forward. A text is just ink on a page. It's silent. You can't ask it questions. It can't clarify what it meant. It won't adapt its ancient wisdom to your modern problems. It needs a human mind to unlock it, and that simple fact changes everything. This leads us straight into stage 2, the closure of the canon. Because if you have a silent text and a bunch of competing memories and writings floating around, you've got chaos. So communities have to draw a line in the sand. They have to decide which texts are in and which are out. They basically need to freeze the source material. This is all about setting boundaries. The community officially says, okay, these books and only these books count as the word of God. We saw this with early Christians at councils like Nicaea fighting over which gospels were legit. We saw it in rabbinic Judaism, sealing generations of debate into the Talmud. It's a desperate attempt to create a stable foundation. But here's the great irony. You'd think having just one set of approved books would settle all the arguments, right? Nope. It actually makes them more intense. Because now every single theological battle, every political squabble, has to be fought on the battlefield of that one limited text. The stakes for every single interpretation just went through the roof. Well, this brings us logically to stage 3, the rise of the interpreters. If everyone's fighting over the meaning of the same book, guess who suddenly has all the power? The person who can give the most convincing explanation. And right here is where we see authority take another giant leap. It's not really in the original divine encounter anymore. It's not even fully in the text itself. The power moves to a new class of people, the qualified experts who can explain the text to everybody else. And these are the new authority figures, the priests, the rabbis, the scholars, the theologians. They become the new power brokers. Their whole job is to be the bridge across that ever-widening gap between the silent, ancient text and the living, breathing community. They become the essential mediators of truth. The sacred is no longer spoken. It is argued. This quote just nails it, doesn't it? It captures the new reality perfectly. The experience of the holy isn't about listening anymore. It's an active intellectual process of debate, logic, and persuasion. So if the sacred has to be argued over, you're going to need a rule book for the argument. And that brings us to stage 4, the proliferation of doctrine. People need answers, and with no divine voice to give them, humans have to step in and build entire systems of answers. A really simple way to think about it is this. Theology expands to fill the space that revelation leaves behind. All those massive, complex systems of doctrine you see in world religions, they aren't just the product of deep thought. They are human constructions, engineered from the ground up to create certainty in the face of divine silence. And this explosion of doctrine serves really practical needs. It helps settle messy internal disputes, like the Christian arguments over the nature of Christ. It helps the group respond to outside threats, creates a stable identity, and, let's be real, it does a great job of cementing the power of that interpretive class. And this takes us to the final stage of this migration. Now, the interpretation itself becomes the authority. The human system of explanation doesn't just point to the sacred text anymore. The system itself becomes sacred.
This shows you the final destination of our journey. The very definition of faith gets turned on its head. It shifts from being about a personal relationship, a direct encounter with God, to being about adherence to the correct, authorized system of beliefs. It's less about listening and more about accepting.
And what this means ultimately is that your loyalty to the faith isn't measured by your personal experience anymore. It's measured by your agreement with the established doctrine. And in a system like that, if you disagree, you're not just offering a different opinion, you're a heretic. You're a direct threat to the entire structure of authority. So after these 5 stages, a completely new system of authority is running the show. How does it maintain its legitimacy? How does it feel like it's been there all along? Well, it does it through a very powerful trick, the illusion of continuity. Here's how the illusion works. The physical book, the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, it looks the same. It's unchanging. And because the source looks unchanged, the community feels like its faith is also unchanged. But behind that stable cover, the meaning being pulled from the text is constantly evolving, always adapting to new challenges and new realities. Which leads us to this profound takeaway. Religion no longer depends on God speaking. It depends on humans speaking for God. The system becomes totally self-sustaining. And paradoxically, the ongoing success of the institution actually requires the divine voice to remain silent so that the human structures of interpretation can keep managing meaning and authority. And that leaves us with this one final provocative question. Once you understand this historical process, once you recognize just how much of meaning, morality, and authority are really the products of human interpretation, what happens then? What does that mean for belief, for institutions, and for the very idea of the sacred? That's a question every student of history and religion has to wrestle with. Thanks for watching.